Good morning. Bonjour. Guten Tag. Yeah. My name is Tom Kunitz, and I'm a system engineer at Jamf. And before we start, I have a question for you. So, how many of you have installed one JSS? Okay. How many of you have installed 5 JSS? Okay, 10? Less. 100? Too many, perhaps? Okay, I'll get another question then. How long does it take? Usually, roughly? Too long? No? 30 minutes if you're lucky. Okay, another guess? Too long. So you're in the right session. So let me introduce Henry, and he will blow your mind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rob and Tom, for inviting me. So today, I present Playbooks, automation of JSS infrastructures. I will talk on configuration management and how to use configuration management to set up one JSS or many JSS. It's a very technical session, so I think there will be questions for the Q&A, of course. But let me start. My name is Henry Stamer-Johann. I'm a systems engineer and consultant with Apfelwerk, GmbH and Co. KG. We're in Germany. We're MSP, distributor, and integrator for Jamf software. And Apfelwerk is based in Stuttgart. That's where Mercedes and Porsche comes from. I live up north in Hamburg. That's a nice big city. And so mainly I work in Hamburg and Berlin areas in Germany. So I will talk about automation of JSS infrastructures, and on the agenda I have an introduction how we automate JSS infrastructures in our environments with Apfelwerk, and you will get a taste of Ansible. That's a configuration management tool that is quite new. Some people have heard Puppet, some people have heard Chef. So Ansible falls in that domain, but it's some kind of special. And I will show some practical examples so you can really follow and see the power of automation. Some facts on us. We run a consultancy business on all Apple things. People can hire us to go in, fix stuff. People can hire us to get us on board before implementing something. And we, as you, many of you, we run a simple consultancy business. But we're also a Jamf distributor and operate as MSP. And this takes some special attention how to scale that. And as we're a small company, we thought, okay, how can we organize this? And for that reason, we decided it makes sense to automate where possible. Because on busy days, we all have our nodes, our wikis, but on busy days, if you copy-paste and you forget something, something can go wrong. So, and you will end up like this guy when he starts to look down. That looks like this. So automation helps us to stay safe, save time, and succeed. And that's the important fact. We like to automate all the things because it helps us to get rid of manual tasks and deploy a JSS or upgrade a JSS with ease. And that's the important fact for us, because sometimes we have many tasks during a day, and yeah, so automation keeps us safe. We don't like misconfigurations. So yeah, anybody from down under can help us here to read that label? We don't want to repeat ourselves by doing things by hand. We manage a VPS for not every client, but for many clients. So we have a couple of VPSs already running a JSS. And by doing this and taking care and, this like pet keeping a care about pets, it's better to not do everything by hand. And of course, there's a solution to use shell scripts. There's a couple of cool scripts out there, but to maintain them, this could be tedious. And if there's some issues, and issues will happen one time, using ad hoc fixes can save that issue. But if you forget to document it, the problem is that you get out of sync with your documentation. So the current state of the machine is in a different state than your documentation, and you get a configuration drift. And there's ways to avoid that. So Tom asked you how many of you have installed a JSS and how long did it take? So we heard about 30 minutes. We're now 4 minutes in the presentation, so the presentation should be running a half an hour. So we could do that now. And that's what we do. We do it now. I have a demo, and I will set up a JSS in the demo, automated with the Ansible playbook. What is a playbook? A playbook is a text file, and I will use the Ansible framework to call up the text file, and the configuration management abilities of Ansible will install a JSS. To explain what you will see in a minute, we have a split screen. On the top, we have the terminal window 1. This is the local admin machine. It has OS 10.9.5 installed and Ansible installed. And below, we have the terminal window 2 and the terminal window 3. These terminal windows are on the Linux boxes, or the Linux box that I will set up a JSS onto. So I will use the top command in terminal window 2, and I will use the tail on the syslog in terminal window 3. So we will see in terminal window 1 that there will be some tasks going through. And if the task stops somewhere, that means that the server has to do something. And we can measure the activity in terminal window 2 and terminal window 3. Okay? So I will start a command and measure the timing of the playbook run. So for that, I use the time to measure the timing. Then I call Ansible playbook. That's the command to call up the Ansible binary. And then I refer to the install JSS YAML file. So that's a text file. That's my playbook. And so let's start. I start with a blank page. I can't reach the JSS. So as said, I'm logging into the server and use top. You see some activity. And in the top window, I start my command. So what happened? I already started the playbook. And let's think about what is involved in setting up a JSS. We need MySQL. We need also the OpenJDK to be installed. And if that's installed, we need a database, we need a user for the database, setting up a password. And of course, this is followed by starting the installer. So actually, what I'm doing here is exactly the same. I connect right now to the server via SSH and trigger that commands. It's the same thing you see as in the install instruction. And we see some activity going on. Right now, the database was created, I set up a user, and I push the installer from my local machine up to the server. And I start the installer, of course. The installer will install Tomcat and all the files that are involved to set up a JSS. And I do a couple of more things that are happening here. And we should see more activity right now. So right now, the JSS is starting up. Tomcat is coming up. There's some processes. It will connect to the database. And right now, we wait for the Tomcat right now. So there's a couple of things I do here on top. I integrate with the JSS API to set up more than just the JSS. And we will see what's happening right now. I have the JSS. I have a self-signed certificate, and I can log in. Because I've configured a user. That's the user. And for the demo, I also included, to set up a LDAP server, I do a search query right now in the test for my colleague Andreas Schenk over there. It works. And also for the demo, I included to set up a VPP account. And doing this was possible via the JSS API. And the total runtime was 1 minute, 49 seconds. That's awesome. And if you look, the green text on top, there's a task, and it says, OK, I've set up the JSS database utility to a custom backup time of 2 a.m. So I never forget the backup. Let's wrap up. What happened? I installed MySQL Server and the Java packages. I created the database for the JSS. I created the user and the password. I pushed the installer from my local machine to the remote server and started it. And I created an initial login into the database. This is just a MySQL call that I triggered through my configuration management. And then I used the JSS API to set up all the rest. In this example, I used it to set up the license, the LDAP, and the VPP. But here, you could do much more. Everything that's possible with the JSS API, you can insert that here. And I never forget to set my backup. That's an important fact. And this happened in less than 2 minutes. That's great. This was quite fast, looks amazing, but what's going on? What's going on here? So a functional overview. I have a command, Ansible, Playbook, and I refer to a text file in the YAML format. We will look into the text file later on. And to understand it better, how Ansible uses things, I have to refer to an analogy here. On the left side, you will see iOS. We all know iOS. It has some apps. And one app can do one thing very well. The clock shows us the clock, calendar, and so forth. And on the right hand, you see a folder structure. There's my Playbook file and a couple of subfolders and associated files. So we also know this concept. And with my Ansible Playbook file, I define some roles. And these roles are on the lower end of the text file, will be working through from top to bottom. And each role works like an app. I define a role to prepare my system. I define a role to set up the database. I define a role to upload and start the JSS installer, and for the JSS API, and to set my backup. So every role has some tasks embedded. And my playbook is just calling up the right role in the right sequence. So let's look what the sysprep role had done. It said apt-get install MySQL Server OpenJDK. That's it. Pretty simple. And the same for the role to set up the database. I create the database, I create a user, and I set a password. And if I would rerun this playbook and I change the password, what would happen? The database is already there. It will only change the password in that role for the SQL database. And to go on, all those roles will execute tasks. Tasks are the tiny bits. That's the one that we've seen on the output in the top terminal window. And with tasks, I can upload files. I can start the JSS installer. It's pretty much like doing shell operations. If I SSH into the machine, I would say, hey, start the installer. And that's the same thing I do in the task within my role. And I can use template files. That's very powerful with configuration management. And of course, I trigger commands, Unix commands, and the connection is going over SSL. It reaches out to the server, and in the end, I get my shiny JSS instance. Okay, so far? So let's look into the playbook, into the file itself. It's written in YAML. YAML is a human-readable and easy editable data serialization format. And that's how it looks. The first line of text refers to the hosts. And the host could be one server, but it could be many. It's just, I have a host entry for Ansible, and I have a name. I refer to this name, JNUC JSS here, and that name could be one server or many servers. And this is followed by a block of variables. These are standard variables you use to, the name of the local host, the name of the database, and we're here just installing one JSS. So it's easy to change things here, because the guys at Jamf are pretty busy and they are updating the versions. So, and I can just change this one line and push up the version to the current version, rerun my playbook, database is already there, doesn't get touched, but it will update my JSS from the former 9.5 to 9.6 and all the new versions released. And down there, I have the roles. And I already explained how that works. On the file organization level, I said it's a modular structure. I created folders to keep files that are certainly important for one role. And those files are text files as well. It's all written in YAML. And so, yeah, that's how the structure looks. In green, I have my playbook file. That's the file we looked into. And in red, I have a defaults folder, and within the folder, there's one YAML file. And there I would put some default definitions. That could be all the packages I want to install. So within there, I write MySQL, OpenJDK, and also other binaries I might like to have on my server. And then there's, in blue, there's the files folder. And within the files folder, if there's a new JSS coming out, I go to Jamf Nation, I download the folder for the installer, and I just put it there. And I just give it the name JSS_9.60 and installer. And next time I change the version number in my playbook, it will reach out to the right folder, picks the right installer, uploads it, and done. And in yellow, I have the roles folder. So that's my complete playbook folder here. And if we look into one role, an example, I also have a similar structure. But here I have a tasks folder. And within the task folder, I have a YAML file, which is called main YAML file. And within this main YAML file, I could write all my tasks into one file. But sometimes it makes sense to spread this out to separate files. So I can refer from my main YAML also to other files that are sitting in the same folder. And the only thing I have to do is I have to write include name of YAML file. And within that YAML file, there would be the tasks. And here I also have a template folder. And within the template folder, I can use Jinja2 template files. What's a template file? It could be an XML file with just a placeholder. And when I want to use the XML file in processing through my tasks, the only thing that gets changed is, of course, the name, the .j2, that's a Jinja2 file. That name gets stripped, and my variable gets inserted. So I get a full XML file. And if you've seen a session yesterday on how to interact with the JSS API, you've seen some weird text script things going on. This is a plain XML file you can really, with the right formatting, and it's just inserting this little bit. And I also have the opportunity to, within a role folder, to use a vars folder. There I would put in variables that are only dedicated for that role. In this case, that's a role for the JSS data backup. So I could put in there the path to the data backup utility. That's a variable I've inserted there. Okay, so far, to accomplish complex work, I think modularity is the key. And recap, the playbook is a text file, and it just describes the multiple tasks that should be performed from top to bottom. And by using roles, that modular file structure, I can group related tasks and configurations and also the associated data into a bundle. And for me, it's much easier to maintain that bundle. If I just want to interact with MySQL, I go to the MySQL folder, the role folder, and change the task there and not in my full playbook. Just think about if you have one big script, 800 lines of code, and you change something there, that could be formatting issues, things you break. This will not happen here. And I talk about tasks and modules. So a task is something that you would usually do in a terminal by hand. And Ansible uses tasks to trigger Ansible modules. And the Ansible modules are embedded into Ansible. That's the framework I use. And every Ansible module, the module that deals with MySQL, of course, knows about the parameters that are involved with MySQL. So every module has custom parameters, and it allows me to substitute variables. That's how a task file looks like. I have a name, and that's the output I see in my terminal. And on task 1, I refer to the Ansible module, that's in orange, that's MySQLDB. And I say, OK, create a MySQL database with a custom name. And in there, I have a variable. So that's a placeholder. I insert the name of the database, and that's exactly the variable I have in my main playbook file. I can change the name there, and it will be inserted here when this task is executed. And the next task is the MySQL, the Ansible module to interact with the MySQL user. So I say, MySQL user, where's the host? This could be localhost, could be another machine. And I insert the name of the user, the password, and all the permissions I need for my SQL database. Let's recap. All we've seen so far is editing text files, human readable text files in YAML format. And you've heard we can include variables and the parameters for execution. And by organizing everything into roles folders, I can stuff related tasks for my better usability when I want to change things in functionality. If I want to change things just on the level how the database should be, I just go to the playbook file. And as I mentioned, everything in the playbook file is performed or processed in a deterministic way. It's from top to bottom. First role, first execution. Second role, second execution, and so forth. And I just say, include this role, include that tasks. That's the organization of that configuration management tool. The configuration management tool is named Ansible. And what you've seen is that I use it for configuration management and for provisioning. Provisioning is the step to reach out and install everything on the server. And configuration management would be more the task of changing an existing database password, let's say. Some details on Ansible. It's open source. It's based on Python. And as said, it just uses SSH to connect to the nodes to the remote servers I want to manage. And it connects over SSH and triggers tasks on that system. It uses a push model. It reaches out. And it doesn't need an agent to be present on my servers I want to manage. And that's an important fact. I don't need a central server. I don't need a, there's Puppet and Chef. They need a central server usually. There's other ways around that, but yeah, I don't need this here at all. I don't have to think about a central server. And I don't need some special software installed on my node. It's agentless. And on every run of a playbook, it will connect to the server and it will collect facts. It will know, is MySQL installed or not? And if MySQL is installed, okay, skip that step. So it can make stateful decisions. It will know about the context before running tasks. I don't have to over and over install MySQL, the binary, when it's already there. And think about what a shell script would do. It will trigger apt-get install MySQL, and it will just try to install it. And here, this step is skipped. So that's called idempotency. So idempotent means you can run multiple times without changing the result beyond the initial application. And that's very, very cool. Ansible is not the only thing that can do this. As said, Chef, Puppet, and Salt are solutions who do this well. But why did I pick Ansible here? I used to work with Puppet. I used to learn it. I had a hard time because I don't use it every day. And it has some complexity. It's cool what you can do with Puppet. You can really scale big time. But we don't need this here. We take care of 1, 2, 3, 10, 50 servers. That's just a joke for all the web people out there doing big-time web operations like Netflix and that. So I think Ansible is the easiest configuration management tool to get started with. And while Puppet and Chef are very great tools, they have a hard learning curve. So I suffered that a bit. And it's hard to fully master. If you sit down there and do Puppet or Chef every day, of course, that's your tool. These are just tools. The way you do it, if you already have good experience with Puppet, do the same thing with Puppet. This is not agnostic this is just not possible with Ansible. You can do this with Puppet and Chef and Salt as well. This is just an example. But I choose Ansible here because it's so easy to maintain. And of course, as said, you can use shell scripts as well. But in my opinion, this will get complicated. And as said, it will try to override things over and over. And who wants that? So the requirements to use Ansible. You have to install it on your admin machine. And of course, you need Python to be on your machine to run Ansible. And you need Python on the nodes to manage. But that's pretty much the standard. Every Linux comes with Python. Every OS X comes with Python. So, and I've heard, I'm not a Windows guy, but I've heard it's easy to install Python on Windows as well. When using this, that if you want this speed that I've shown, it's better to have SSH public keys installed on the machines you want to manage. If you go to a VPS service like DigitalOcean or others, if you set up a VPS, they will ask you for your SSH key, and they will insert it for you. So their automation even lets you start faster, because you don't have to insert the SSH key by yourself. It's there. You just go to the IP and push Ansible to do things. And by the great work of Ansible Inc., the corporation that creates Ansible, they have installers for OS X, Linux, and Windows. So if you have a Windows admin machine, you can run Ansible, of course. To install Ansible, or also the interaction that I showed here with the JSS, there's some steps, but it's quite easy. You have Python on your system, and Python comes with easy install. So I can use the first command and say easy install pip. What is pip? Pip is a Python package manager. And pip can install Ansible. It's just this command, sudo pip install Ansible. What do I need for this? I need to have, on OS X, the Xcode command line tools. And on Linux, I need to also have some developer tools installed. But every Linux guys, they need to have that installed anyways. And to interact with the JSS API, I also have to embed or install with pip the HTTP lib2. This one can interact with the API. The advantages I see, we can, or yeah, you as well, can automate everything that you will do usually by hand in setting up servers and changing configurations. And it's pretty easy to convert an existing recipe or an existing shell script into Ansible, because it's just text you edit, and you see the logic structure of the recipe, and you just learn to convert this to Ansible. That's a learning curve with every tool. So Ansible is nothing special here. And what you gain is a reproducible install experience, because once my playbook and all the associated role files are set, I can repeat it all over. It will not fail, because it's all automated. Or if it fails, then there's other reasons, like the DigitalOcean is not available online or whatever. Of course, things can fail on that level, but not with pushing my settings and pushing this, everything with Ansible. And the playbooks and all the files and folders associated, they describe my current state. And this is a pretty cool fact. By using Git, it's just text files. So Git can easily handle that. And by using Git, I automatically can comply to change management requirements. If a department comes up and say, oh, what was changed? I just look up in Git, oh, I changed this file and that setting. And this can be your time machine for the playbooks. That's cool. Some more practical examples. I reuse some of the roles I've used in my first playbook run to change the password that is used for the MySQL database. And of course, I have, who has still the standard password set for the JSS? Who uses the standard password? Is what's the password? Jamf software, Jamf SW03. Who uses that? Okay, you all changed that? That's cool. Because that's best practice. So what I'm doing here again, I measure the timing again. I start a new Ansible playbook, but it uses the same role. I have a long password. I can't remember this. It's just like bip, bip, bip. And it will reach out again, and it will touch the database XML file within Tomcat. And it changed the password there. It will reach out to MySQL and change the password there. And it will restart Tomcat automatically. So we will see Tomcat is restarting. And to verify, I just shortly log in. So it should work. And you've seen fast again. For if there's any reason I want to change quickly the password, done in 19 seconds. And of course, again, I can do this, I can apply this to all my servers. And of course, you don't have to apply the same password to all servers. There's ways to organize this, to just have a list of passwords, and this matches up the list of servers you want to manage. And then you just trigger the playbook, and it touches each server with a unique password. That's quite cool. I showed you how to install things with a playbook, but Ansible is powerful also without playbooks. I can use Ansible in an ad hoc fashion to talk to a couple of servers, and that's what I show in my next example. We all know about the shell shock problem, the bash binary is affected, and what I will show is that I will reach out to a cluster of machines, 5 machines, simultaneously, and Ansible will check if those servers are affected by the shell shock. So, and if that is true, I have to update the binary. And I show you how this works. Below there, there's my 5 servers, and I call them up with JSS cluster. So if I trigger my command here, I simultaneously reach out to 5 servers. And I use the command to check if they're affected by shell shock. And in my return, I see, oh, all vulnerable. So how to fix that? And I show you. Again, Ansible, JSS cluster. That's all the servers I want to talk to. And I call up the apt module. Because with apt-get, in my case with Ubuntu, I want to verify that the cache for apt-get is updated on all machines. So the machine knows, oh, there's a new bash binary. And the next argument is that I especially say for the bash binary, ensure that it's in latest state. And by running this command, again, simultaneously, it's just this little one-liner. What it will happen, that it will check the facts on all 5 machines. It will notice, OK, they're not in latest state. And in return, I get the facts back. OK, I've changed things here. And let's verify it. I rerun my first command. And now I've updated the bash binary on my full cluster. And this could be hundreds of servers or thousands of servers. That's the cool thing with configuration management. And as said, Ansible is quite easy. It's like doing things in the shell and editing text files. Let's wrap up. We use Ansible for security. I showed you some examples. And to gain speed. And that's, for me personally, that's the biggest fact. Because it's not only speed. I get a reproducible experience every time. Of course, I've set up a new system here. It's cool for that. But also your existing systems. It's just SSH, what you do by hand. You SSH into the machine and you trigger a command by hand. And Ansible is doing the same. You could start using Ansible for your existing machines. Of course, you have to learn Ansible a bit. That's what I recommend. And I hope you all have a test server as well. So you can start getting into this by changing things on your test environment. And if that works, and you really know, OK, looks good, then you get a reproducible experience if you do the same thing on your production environment. And Ansible is good for doing changes. When I've written a playbook to accomplish certain tasks, I know that I can move from a single context to a multi-context JSS. Of course, I have to develop this, but once it's done, I can just apply it. And I showed you that I can fully integrate with the JSS REST API, and also with other APIs. A playbook is not, I use it for JSS here, but sometimes there's more things you want to install on your servers than just a JSS, and you can manage that with Ansible as well. So we use also this technology to advance. Because when setting up a new machine, I said we're a managed service provider. Of course, we want to monitor the machines. We don't run 50 VPSs somewhere and don't get a feedback unless somebody calls us, oh, JSS is not working anymore. We want to know if things happen. So we integrate with monitoring and notification services. And in our full playbook run, we install that as well. So this takes then, let's say, not 2 minutes. Then a full run will be, let's say, 4 minutes, but it's still pretty fast. The resources to learn on Ansible, they have a very great documentation. Go to docs.ansible.com. There's a very cool Google Groups Ansible project. And there's an Ansible weekly newsletter curated by Matt Janes from DevOps U. So this is a DevOps tool. And of course, you can hire us. We can teach it to you if you want. I'm happy to talk also without hiring us. And yeah, so that's 2 cool books. I really recommend the one by Jeff Gerling, Ansible for DevOps. It's still in beta, it's in writing, it's published on LeanPub. And there's also a good book for the all-over Ansible stuff. That's called Ansible Configuration Management, and that's by Daniel Hall. And the Ansible for DevOps, that's the one you want to have, because this really is, that's the meat and potatoes you want to use when starting with Ansible. And yeah, with this, I say thank you for your attention. And of course, Q&A. Any questions?
Is the root account locked down?
Yeah, I use the SSH key, sure. What do you mean with a lockdown?
With the root MySQL account.
Yeah,
on a
sure.
Default, okay.
Not in this example, but yeah, of course I do that.
Okay.
Yeah, you have for that you need within a root account, the root account on the Linux machine, you need to have a myconfig file somewhere, and there's the password, and yeah, that's all set.
Thanks.
And even if you want to, if you have not set that, there's ways to just establish that. Ansible just changes MySQL in the way, and you place the file there. And if you want to change that password, you rerun a playbook and just change that password in this file. Also for those security-related things, Ansible is very cool. And of course, Puppet and Chef as well. It's great tools.
Great, thank you.
It's all a tool.
You've made it clear that Ansible is available for mobile platforms. Are the playbooks as well generally platform agnostic, or do they need?
Yeah, it's just a YAML text file. So okay, you wanted to know if it's just like any special changes on the platform.
Yeah.
No, it's just if you run on Windows, you open a text editor and you just change the YAML file, and then you say that the answer binary should use that playbook. It's just text files.
So related to that, actually, as far as the playbooks and the YAML files, do you have to explicitly define how it installs packages, or does Ansible itself know, hey, if I say install MySQL, if you run it on a Red Hat box, they'll use Yum. If you run it on a Debian box, they'll use apt-get, things like that?
Okay, so I get from your question, you want to know if you don't run on a Debian box, so you have then a Red Hat box. In that case, of course, you have to generalize the playbooks, but right. There's many examples out there, and in this case, it's a playbook just for our environment. If you want to publish a playbook, which is possible over GitHub, you find many resources there on Ansible already. Then you have to check, when Ansible is using facts, when it connects over SSH, it will notice, oh, I'm having a Red Hat box here. And then you can just have tasks, so there you would use the yum to install MySQL, and then it will just use that command. So Ansible, can handle that pretty well.
Okay. Great, thanks.
So do you use the tower then to manage your Ansible plays, or do you just run it from the command line?
Not right now. So we manage it from the command line. As said, we're a small team. if you use Tower, which is like Tower is a web solution to trigger commands or to trigger playbooks, but it's a paid product if you scale over a certain amount. So yeah, we have not looked into that. I know that it exists, and I didn't have the time to play with Tower. But that's advanced demand in using Ansible anyways.
Yeah. And maybe to the last question, so you can actually use the environment variables to switch behavior based on the host, so you could use a statement that would run apt if it's Ubuntu or yum if it's Red Hat or et cetera. So.
Yeah, so your question is, again, so what will happen if you have another operating system? When Ansible is using facts, it will know I'm running on Red Hat, and then it will, you can organize it that it will use the JAM module, and of course the apt module would not make sense. But in that case, you would just, in the task file, you would not say apt, but you would just say JAM. And the rest usually is the same. What are the packages you want to install? Probably the name has changed. I don't know. But that's platform specific.
Hi, just wondering if you have any experience setting up clusters of test machines using this,
yeah.
and or automating application testing.
The question was if I have experience, or if we have experience in setting up a clustered system. I used Ansible especially for that, to play around with a more complex clustered system. And what was the last part of your question?
If you have experience setting up automated testing.
Okay, then the second part of the question is if I have experience in automated testing. For that, you would go for stuff like Selenium and time. I don't have the time to play with that, but technically, you're free to do that. Sure. Because you can use Ansible also to trigger local tasks. And let's say you have your Selenium. Selenium is a web testing environment. I hope I get it right. If you have Selenium running on your local admin machine, you can say, Ansible, reach out, install all the stuff, change all the things, and then you can say, Ansible, do local tasks on my admin machine, and then you can start Selenium stuff. Sure. Technically, it's possible. Hey.
I had a question about the ad hoc task that you showed at the end.
Yeah.
With the way you're using Ansible, what is the difference between an ad hoc task and what you were doing earlier? Is it just that you're using the inventory and SSH keys, but not a playbook?
No, the difference is that should I write a playbook, username for a simple task like just installing things? So the ad hoc fashion is pretty much in SSH into a machine and then trigger 1 or 2 commands. That's the ad hoc thing, is to make quick changes. Okay. Ansible has the ability, but yeah, for the complex stuff and also for documenting things, I recommend to use playbooks, because if you change things in an ad hoc fashion, of course, Ansible can see the difference on checking back again on the next run and see, oh, suddenly MySQL is installed, and then it skips that step, and you will notify, okay, that step is skipped. But yeah, so then it's not in your configuration management.
So the primary difference is that you're just giving it a command and not giving it, this is the text file with the
exactly
predefined
for that
task. Okay.
And if you want to check, let's say you have a large fleet of servers, and you want to see, is the NTP working on every server? What would you do for 20 servers? Log into every server? That's tedious. You have just, you know the command, you say, Ansible, reach out to all my servers, and in return, you will see, okay, there's this server and that server, and they are out of time.
Thanks.
So you mentioned using Git. Do you fork a playbook for certain clusters of servers, or how do you, I guess I'm curious more about how you use Git.
So the question is how we use Git. It's just, we have usually a playbook that is a general playbook. And if I do changes, that's what I use with Git. And if we have a special project, let's say setting up a cluster, then I would organize, I would copy the roles I have and just, make up a new project. Because it's just a few text files. It's very tiny. And then in that case, I would have a new Git repo just for that special case. But in generally, the roles, what you want to do is you want to maintain a role and just use the role in a general fashion, and a special playbook per application you want to, you want to reach. More questions?
I was just wondering if, and it's possible that this is out of the scope of this presentation, but it seems that Ansible is very approachable. It has a relatively not so steep learning curve compared to some things like Chef. Do you know specifically some things that you can't do with Ansible that you've run into that I wish we could do this, but we'd have to move to something bigger?
So the question is, what are the pitfalls in using Ansible, I guess? Currently, I have not faced one. So my personal experience when I first touched Ansible, it's about less than 2 years ago, I could not succeed in installing the binary. At that time, the project was very new and it was like, not working. I never looked into it again. And but when I realized, okay, we now are MSP, we're small, so we have to automate stuff, and that's my job very often, to automate things. Then I had known, okay, I can do it in Puppet, but it's more complex, and I reached out to Ansible again and just learned it quite quickly. So it's, as I said, it's the best tool, in my opinion, for that approach. If I would work in another environment and have, let's say, if I would be in your team at Jamf, there's definitely reasons to do things with Chef. So that's another consideration, of course. It's just like I show you how to do things with Ansible, but you can stick the same idea to other configuration management tools.
Thanks.
Hi, so if Ansible works with a push method, is it not possible to ensure the machine state like you can with Puppet? Because Puppet's running on a server, and you can say, I want it to always be like this, even if someone else changes it.
I didn't get the full question. Sorry, can you repeat it again?
Okay, so because it's a push method that Ansible uses, is it the case that you can't ensure the machine state once you've installed it on an ongoing basis?
If your question is how to ensure that the machine state has not changed. Yes. And the push model would mean that you have to actually trigger that. And technically, Puppet has a central server, and it reaches out, like the JSS. The JSS is our central server. It knows everything, but the client connects to our JSS. And Puppet works pretty much the same. And in this case, Ansible is just like pushing things out. And for that, you would be using Tower. That's the tool that was mentioned earlier in a question. So Tower is exactly for that purpose. Tower knows about all your servers, and like a CI could just like check all things, and in a web interface notifies you, oh, server 27 has an issue, and whatever is the return. More questions? Ah, somebody's waving over there.
Would you be able to publish your demonstration playbooks?
I have to check this, but it's not that hard. I can just, as said, within this book, I think the resource, the Ansible for DevOps, interacting with MySQL and Tomcat, that's for all those web automation people. It's just the simple things. And you find resources already out there. It's nothing special that I did here. But yeah, I have to check that. And I know that O'Reilly, I don't know when it's published, but Lauren Hochstein, which is a very active guy in the Ansible community, he will publish a Ansible up and running book. So, and I pretty much guess that even this book will, it's usually those books are 150 pages. Yeah, and it's an easy thing to learn Ansible, I hope. Another question? I think it's better to get the microphone for the rest of the audience.
Yeah, if this is something that we would like to implement, do you guys offer additional training to the admins or the system engineers that would support this?
Yeah, of course. It would not make sense just to go in, do things, and opt out. So if you hire us, let's say for training, we would translate our knowledge to your stuff. Yeah, that's part of the deal then. Okay. Thanks, and thanks, Jam, for having me here.